Welcome to the general considerations of antimicrobial agents, part 2. The specific learning objectives of this lecture is, at the end of the teaching learning session, the student should be able to enumerate the problems arising while using antimicrobial agents, explain the toxicity related to the use of antimicrobials, explain the hypersensitivity reactions related to the use of antimicrobials, explain in detail antimicrobial resistance, explain superinfections with examples, explain nutritional deficiencies produced by the antimicrobial agents, explain the phenomenon of masking of infections by antimicrobial agents. Now, the problems which arise with the use of antimicrobial agents are toxicity in the form of local irritancy and systemic toxicity, hypersensitivity reactions or allergic reactions, antimicrobial resistance, superinfection, nutritional deficiencies, and masking of an infection. Local irritancy is seen in the form of gastric irritation, nausea, vomiting, and loose stools when the antimicrobials are given orally, and almost all the antimicrobials are irritants, especially erythromycin, tetracyclines, chloramphenicol, and certain cephalosporins. And when given intramuscularly, the irritant action of antimicrobials can give rise to a pain at the site of injection and the formation of abscess. When given intravenously, the irritant action can lead to thrombophlebitis of the vein, which is used for injection. So these are the photographs showing the abscess formation because of the irritant nature of the antimicrobials. So what we can see is redness at the site of injection along with the filling of pus. These pictures show thrombophlebitis of the injected vein in the form of redness and inflammation of the vein which is used for injecting the antimicrobial agent. There is going to be inflammation and clot due to the irritant nature of the antimicrobial to the vein. Antimicrobials produce a dose-dependent and a predictable systemic toxicity. Certain antimicrobials like penicillins, erythromycin, some cephalosporins, they have a high therapeutic index. That means they are very safe. Even a 20-fold dose, 20 times the therapeutic dose, does not produce toxicity. Certain antimicrobials like aminoglycosides, tetracyclines, and chloramphenicol, they have a lower therapeutic index. That means the dose has to be individualized and the toxicity should be watched for. Therapeutic drug monitoring may be indicated here. The expected toxicities are with aminoglycosides in the form of vestibulocochlear nerve toxicity and nephrotoxicity. Tetracyclines are expected to produce as toxic effects nephrotoxicity and hepatotoxicity, and bone marrow toxicity has been seen with very high doses of chloramphenicol. Certain antimicrobial agents have an even lower therapeutic index. That means they are very dangerous as far as toxicity is concerned. So these compounds are preferred only when a suitable alternative is not available. Polymyxin B, vancomycin, amphotericin are the drugs which are antimicrobials with a very low therapeutic index. Amphotericin B has been associated with nephrotoxicity, bone marrow toxicity, and neurotoxicity. Vancomycin toxicity has been associated with nephrotoxicity and ototoxicity. Polymyxin B has produced nephrotoxicity and neurotoxicity. Coming to the problems of hypersensitivity reactions or allergic reactions, all antimicrobial agents are capable of causing allergic reactions. Definitely, allergic reactions are most unpredictable and they are not dose related. The allergic reactions can be in the form of rashes, or in the extreme cases can be in the form of anaphylactic shock. So that is why it is mandatory to take a history of any previous allergic reactions to antimicrobial agents before administering them. So of all the antimicrobial agents, the frequent antimicrobials which can cause hypersensitivity reactions are penicillins, cephalosporins, sulfonamides and fluoroquinolones. A range of allergic reactions can be seen with antimicrobial agents. They can be minor in the form of skin rashes, itching, urticaria, and they can be quite serious like angioedema and even anaphylactic shock. Antimicrobial resistance is a serious problem associated with the use of the antimicrobial agents. It refers to the lack of responsiveness of the microbial organisms to the action of these antimicrobial agents. And this is somewhat similar to the phenomenon of tolerance, which is seen in higher organisms and even in human beings. We have studied about tolerance as a higher dose of a drug which is required to produce a particular action. And we have already studied that tolerance can be of two types: pharmacokinetic tolerance and even pharmacodynamic tolerance. Now, the term resistance is used when there is no response or reduced responsiveness of the antimicrobial agents, or we can say reduced responsiveness of the microorganisms to the action of the antimicrobial agents. So resistance can be of two types: natural resistance and acquired resistance. Now, the acquisition of resistance depends on the drug as well as the microorganism. There are certain microbial organisms which acquire resistance rapidly, that is the tubercle bacilli, Staphylococcus aureus and the coliforms, whereas certain microorganisms like spirochetes like Treponema pallidum have not acquired resistance towards penicillin G despite of having been used as the first line drugs in the treatment of syphilis for nearly 8 decades. Gonococcal organisms gain resistance rapidly to sulfonamides but only very slowly towards penicillin G. That means the antimicrobial agent also has a role in determining the resistance which is offered by the microorganisms. Natural resistance is the innate or the inbuilt or the intrinsic resistance which is already present in the microorganisms by default. Clinically, natural resistance is less relevant and is relatively of a lower grade. The reason for this natural resistance is the absence of the target molecule or the metabolic process which happens to be the target of action of the antimicrobial agent. For example, penicillin G is inactive against gram-negative bacilli. That means the gram-negative bacilli are resistant to the action of penicillin G because the target molecule of action of penicillin G is peptidoglycan, which is absent in the cell wall of the gram-negative bacilli. Now, gram-positive organisms, both the cocci and bacilli, are sensitive to the action of penicillin G because their cell wall is made up of peptidoglycan. Now, the same explanation can be given as to why penicillin G is non-toxic to human cells. Human cell wall does not contain peptidoglycan. That is why penicillin G is selectively toxic to the microbial organisms. Other examples are tubercle bacilli are resistant to the action of tetracyclines. Aerobic organisms do not respond to metronidazole. Anaerobic organisms are insensitive to the action of aminoglycosides. Acquired resistance is the resistance which is acquired as a result of persistent exposure of the microorganisms to the antimicrobial agent. That means in the beginning the microorganism was sensitive to the antimicrobial agent, but repeated exposure to the antimicrobial agent results in the acquisition of resistance. Clinically, acquired resistance is more important than natural resistance. Now, acquired resistance is of two mechanisms. It is mutation and gene transfer. Mutation is also known as vertical transfer of resistance. That means the resistance is inheritable. It is shared by the future generations. That is the meaning of vertical transfer of resistance. Now, mutation is a stable, heritable genetic change which occurs spontaneously and randomly amongst the microorganisms. Stable, that means once it is acquired, it remains so. Heritable, that means it is given to the future generations. The genetic change is shared with the future generations. Occurs spontaneously, that means all of a sudden it happens. Randomly, any microorganism amongst the population can acquire mutation. That is the meaning of random. And mutation can be single step mutation and multi-step mutation. Single genetic modification confers higher level of resistance in single step mutation. Example, the resistance which is seen in enterococci towards streptomycin is because of single genetic modification, whereas resistance seen towards erythromycin, tetracyclines and chloramphenicol is because the microorganisms undergo multiple genetic modifications, which is multi-step mutation. Any sensitive population of microorganisms, they contain a few mutants which require higher concentration of antimicrobial agent for elimination. That means these microorganisms which are called as mutants, they have undergone some genetic modifications because of which they are resistant to the regularly used concentration of antimicrobials. That means they need a higher concentration of the antimicrobial agent for elimination, which we usually don't do for the sake of preventing toxicity. So what happens is these mutants are selectively preserved and they get a chance to proliferate when the sensitive population is eliminated by the antimicrobial agent, because when the sensitive population is eliminated, all the nutrition is had by these mutants, because of which they proliferate. So it seems as though a sensitive population has been replaced by a resistant one. So this is classically seen when we use only one antitubercular drug in the treatment of tuberculosis. So what happens is when we use only one antitubercular agent, the sensitive population is wiped off. So the mutants will selectively proliferate. Okay, that is why we use multi-drug treatment for tuberculosis. So what happens is even if the mutants are spared, that means one antitubercular drug cannot kill the mutants, another one which is used in the regimen will kill these mutants. So that is how we prevent the emergence of resistance by using multi-drug treatment for tuberculosis. So you can have a look at this picture which gives you an idea about mutation. So there is a genetic change which take place, and this is responsible for the resistance to be acquired amongst the microorganisms. Now gene transfer or infectious resistance is the other mechanism of acquired resistance. This is also known as horizontal transfer of resistance. That is, the resistance is shared with other microorganisms of the same generation. Now this type of resistance can lead to resistance to more than one antimicrobial agent concurrently. That means the organisms can acquire multi-drug resistance. Now, gene transfer or infectious resistance are of three types: conjugation, transduction, and transformation. Now, conjugation happens because of the transfer of a resistant factor or the R factor. That means the genetic material which carries the information regarding the resistance, and this occurs between gram-negative bacilli of the same or different species. Usually this occurs in the colon, where there is a large microbial population, usually which happens due to contamination of food and water with the pathogenic microorganisms. Now, the transfer of R factor between two cells or two microbial organisms occurs only if a resistant transfer factor is present. Probably this acts as a vehicle. Now, this R factor, the genetic material which has the information regarding the resistance, can be chromosomal DNA or it can be extra chromosomal DNA, which is otherwise known as a plasmid. An example for this type of resistance is the resistance offered by Salmonella typhi towards chloramphenicol. That means Salmonella typhi acquire resistance towards chloramphenicol due to conjugation. So this diagram shows us how conjugation takes place. So there is a formation of a bridge, or there is a formation of a pilus between the two microbial organisms, and as you can see, the genetic material which carries the information regarding the resistance is shared by the donor to the recipient. So now the recipient, which has the information regarding resistance, acts as a new donor. That means it is going to share the information about resistance by donating its genetic material to another recipient. Transduction is the other mechanism of genetic transfer or infectious resistance. The transfer of the resistant factor occurs through a bacteriophage. This bacteriophage, it acquires the resistant factor from a bacterium it had infected previously. Now this bacteriophage, it transfers the resistant factor to another bacterium it further infects. So resistance of microbial organisms towards penicillin, erythromycin and chloramphenicol has been due to transduction. So transduction consists of a virus which contains pieces of bacterial DNA that it accidentally picked up from its previous host, infects another bacterial cell and passes on the resistant material to the other bacterium. This is transduction. Transformation consists of the resistant genetic material being dumped into the medium by resistant bacteria, and the same is picked up by a sensitive microorganism which, after acquiring the resistant factor, becomes resistant. Transformation is clinically not as relevant as conjugation and transduction. Now, resistant microorganisms can be one, drug tolerant, they can be drug destroying or drug impermeable. The microorganism is said to be drug tolerant when the target biomolecule loses affinity for the antimicrobial agent. That means the antimicrobial agent is not able to bind to the target biomolecule, because of which it cannot produce its antimicrobial action. So an example for this is rifampicin binds to RNA polymerase and then produces its action. Now staphylococcal organisms and Escherichia coli organisms, they become resistant to rifampicin because their RNA polymerase loses affinity for rifampicin. That means rifampicin can no longer bind to the RNA polymerase in resistant microorganisms. microorganisms. Similarly, certain microorganisms lose the affinity to penicillins because the penicillin binding proteins present in their cells lose affinity to penicillins. So penicillins cannot bind to these proteins. Similarly, the organisms which become resistant to sulfonamides, they start utilizing preformed folic acid rather than synthesizing it from PABA obtained from the medium. So sulfonamides produce their action by interfering with the uptake of PABA from the medium. So since these microorganisms do not use the PABA, they start utilizing preformed folic acid, they become resistant to sulfonamides. Similarly, mutation of the binding site leads to resistance to certain antimicrobial agents. For example, fluoroquinolones interfere with the enzyme DNA gyrase. So resistant microorganisms have a DNA gyrase within them which interferes with the binding of fluoroquinolones because of a mutation of the binding site. Similarly, macrolides, tetracyclines and chloramphenicol, they act by interfering with the bacterial protein synthesis after binding to ribosomal binding sites. Now, resistant microorganisms have the ribosomal binding sites which have mutated, and hence they lose the affinity for these agents. That means they do not allow these agents to bind to their binding site. Hence, they interfere with the action of these antimicrobial agents. Certain microorganisms can be drug destroying and hence they are resistant to their action. For example, staphylococcal organisms, gonococci and Haemophilus influenza, they are resistant to beta-lactam antimicrobials because they have the ability to produce beta-lactamases. These beta-lactamases are the enzymes produced by these microorganisms. They have the ability to open up the beta-lactam ring and destroy the beta-lactam antimicrobial agents. Similarly, certain microorganisms have the ability to produce a chloramphenicol acetyl transferase which destroys the chloramphenicol molecules. Similarly, certain organisms, they produce enzymes which inactivate aminoglycosides and hence they become resistant to the action of aminoglycosides. Certain microorganisms, they become resistant because they become drug impermeable. So the antimicrobials which produce their effect against gram-negative organisms, they enter into the cells through what are called as porin channels which are present in the cell membrane. These porin channels are made up of certain proteins. If there is a mutation of these proteins, then the porin channels become resistant to the permeation of these antimicrobial molecules. That is how these microorganisms prevent the permeation of the microbial agents into the cell. Example, the gram-negative organisms which have become resistant to tetracyclines, chloramphenicol and aminoglycosides accumulate less of these drugs because the porin channels present in them will not allow these drug molecules to enter. Similarly, the plasmodium which have become resistant to chloroquine will not allow chloroquine to enter into the cells because of the alteration of the porin channels. The same thing happens with the gonococcal organisms which have become resistant to penicillin G because they do not allow penicillin G to enter into the cells. Certain microorganisms, they have the ability to acquire the plasmid directed energy dependent efflux protein. That means these proteins, they pump the drug molecules out of the cells. Once the drug molecules enter into the microbial organisms, the microorganisms have acquired these efflux proteins which pump it out. Hence they become resistant to the action of the antimicrobial agents. Cross resistance, something like cross tolerance. Now, cross resistance is acquisition of resistance to an antimicrobial agent to which the microorganism has not been exposed. So this cross resistance happens between structurally or mechanistically analogous antimicrobial agents. For example, acquisition of resistance to one sulfonamide means resistant to all sulfonamides because these are all structurally similar, mechanistically similar. Resistance to one tetracycline means resistance to all tetracyclines for the same reason. But this does not apply with aminoglycosides, because microbial organisms which are resistant to gentamicin may respond to the action of amikacin. And there is a partial cross tolerance between those antimicrobials which are neither structurally different nor mechanistically different, or probably they may be mechanistically different but definitely not structurally different. So the example is the resistance or cross resistance in between tetracycline and chloramphenicol, erythromycin and lincomycin. How should we prevent antimicrobial agent resistance? So the stakeholders, being the physicians who prescribe the drugs, they have to take certain precautions to prevent the emergence of resistance towards the antimicrobial agents. So first and foremost, we should avoid indiscriminate, unduly prolonged or inadequate use of the antimicrobial agent. That means if the antimicrobial agents are prescribed for 5 days, they should not be prolonged to 10 days or more than 10 days. Or inadequate use, that means if the regimen says the antibiotic should be given for 5 days, it should not be stopped after being given for 1 or 2 days. Indiscriminate use means we have to have a rational use of the antimicrobial agents. Second is, we can prefer specific antimicrobial agents or the narrow spectrum antimicrobials. This can help in prevention of antimicrobial resistance. As far as possible, we should use narrow spectrum antimicrobial agents. Then when we are treating chronic infections like tuberculosis, HIV, AIDS, malaria, subacute bacterial endocarditis, H. pylori and leprosy, we have to use combinations of antimicrobial agents to prevent the emergence of the resistance. And finally, whenever we are treating the infections caused by organisms which have a greater ability to acquire resistance, we have to do it more cautiously. The other problem associated with the use of antimicrobial agents is called as superinfection. Now, superinfection means the appearance of a new infection when we are using an antimicrobial agent to treat an infection. So that means already there is an infection for which we are using the antimicrobial agent. By using the antimicrobial agent, a new infection appears. This is known as superinfection. The reason for this is the destruction of the normal microbial flora which are present in the human body. The normal microbial flora, sometimes they are called as commensals. They contribute to the host resistance. How is it possible? The normal microbial flora, they produce bacteriocins which inhibit the invading pathogens. They also compete for nutrition with the pathogens. Hence, they strengthen the host immunity. And the superinfections are more commonly seen in the sites where commensals are present. For example, oropharynx, gastrointestinal tract, respiratory tract, genitourinary tract, etc. Very rarely the skin. So in superinfections, because of the destruction of the normal microbial flora, the non-pathogenic microbes become pathogenic. Usually certain commensals are non-pathogenic, but they become pathogenic because they don't have competition. And the superinfections are more commonly seen with the broad spectrum antimicrobial agents like tetracyclines, chloramphenicol, the third generation cephalosporins, extended spectrum penicillins, etc. And superinfections are more commonly seen in immunocompromised patients, and they are more difficult to treat. Superinfections are more common in these situations because the immunity is suppressed. Corticosteroid treatment, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, diabetes mellitus, patients with disseminated lupus erythematosus, cancer patients who are on treatment with anti-cancer drugs, because anti-cancer drugs are immunosuppressants. They suppress cell-mediated immunity, they cause neutropenia, they reduce the local immunity, and patients with agranulocytosis. Superinfections are more common in these conditions. Examples of organisms which cause superinfections: Candida albicans causes monilial diarrhea, vulvovaginitis, oral thrush. Nystatin and clotrimazole are used to treat these infections. Proteus is a gram-negative Enterobacteriaceae, produces enteritis, urinary tract infections. Third generation cephalosporins and aminoglycosides are used to treat this superinfection. Pseudomonas aeruginosa, again gram-negative bacilli, Enterobacteriaceae. Enteritis, urinary tract infections are produced as superinfections. Third generation cephalosporins, aminoglycosides, and extended spectrum penicillins like piperacillin are used to treat these infections. Staphylococcus aureus can cause enteritis, for which vancomycin and linezolid are used. Clostridium difficile, anaerobic organism, can produce pseudomembranous enterocolitis, which can sometimes become fatal. There are formation of plaques in the mucosal areas by the enterotoxin produced by this microorganism, and to treat this, metronidazole is the first line drug. Alternative drug is vancomycin. We can prevent superinfections by using, whenever possible, specific antimicrobial agents, and we should not prescribe antibacterials for trivial or very mild infections. Do not prescribe antibacterials for untreatable viral infections, and they should not be prescribed for self-limiting infections. In these ways, we can prevent superinfections. So this is a diagram showing the processes in superinfection. Normal microbial flora keep the opportunistic pathogens in check. Broad spectrum antibiotics kill the non-resistant cells. The drug-resistant pathogens proliferate and they can cause a superinfection. Nutritional deficiencies can sometimes be produced by antimicrobial agents because they suppress the intestinal flora, and these intestinal flora are involved in the synthesis of certain vitamin B complex agents as well as vitamin K. Using antimicrobial agents can sometimes lead to the masking of an infection. Suppose there is a patient having both syphilis and gonorrhea. A single dose of penicillin is enough to treat gonorrhea completely, but syphilis is only suppressed temporarily, and the result of which it flares up after a particular period of time. The same thing happens when a patient has both tuberculosis and upper respiratory tract infection. Streptomycin cures the upper respiratory tract infection completely. It only suppresses tuberculosis to some extent, which later flares up, because streptomycin can only suppress tuberculosis to a certain extent. So students, we come to the end of this lecture. So let us summarize what we have learnt in this lecture. So we have learned the problems which arise with the use of antimicrobial agents, toxicity, both local irritancy and systemic toxicity, hypersensitivity or allergic reactions, antimicrobial resistance, superinfections, nutritional deficiencies, masking of an infection. Thank you very much and happy reading.